On today's Motorhaus, you join us at the NEC for
the Practical Classics Classic Car and Restoration Show. Hello everyone and welcome back to Motorhaus, and it's our very first time back at a show. It's 2022 and shows and people and everything. Isn't this great? So we're here at the Birmingham NEC for the, I actually have to read it. It just trips off the tongue, doesn't it?
It's so easy. The Practical Classics Classic Car and Restoration.
It's not just restoration, it's classic cars as well.
Yeah, as well.
So it's a bit overwhelming initially. We're not really sure where to start, but there's just fabulous classics everywhere.
Why we have a map.
This is why we have a map.
Nice.
What's on the map? On the map.
Buggering it up. Stop buggering it up. Look, things.
There.
Barn finds.
Barn find. Right then, well, if there's one overused term when it comes to restoration projects, it's barn find. Right, it's a massive cliche. There's this whole romance, isn't there, about finding a car. Go on. Right.
You know, because it means it's so much more special if you found it and it was covered in dust and you saved it. Like,
it is a romantic concept, and I don't know about you, I've done it. I have done one with my old Land Rover.
Listen, if you want to add £1,000 to your car, say it's a barn find.
And then put it up for auction with all the dirt still on it.
Yeah, with all the dirt still on it, so then it's authentic muck.
Realistically, in the UK, I've never dragged an unloved old car out of a barn. What I have done is found them underneath a tree, right, that needed dragging out and was covered in about 6 years of moss.
Yeah.
Which then, when you wash the moss off, brings half the paint off, right? But it is a satisfying thing. Like that old Land Rover, it hadn't been on the road for 6 or 7 years. I'll put a picture in now, still miss it. And I know that Land Rover is still on the road now, so it can be a hugely rewarding thing personally.
As a car enthusiast, everyone wants to save something special.
Yeah. How many times does it make financial sense to do so?
Rarely.
Rarely. So, I mean, let's look at this BMW here, right? So, will this ever be financially a viable restoration? I think what I'd do with a car like this, personally, is I'd get it mechanically working properly.
Yeah.
And then maybe a clear coat, right? Maybe a clear coat, right? Maybe let it keep its thing. What's your thoughts?
No, I agree. Keep its patina and just leave it as is.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're just going to be so far down that rabbit hole, it's just not going to be worth it.
Now, there are of course occasions where it is worth it, isn't it? Is that there are certain cars, let's talk about E-types. If it's the right spec E-type to start with, provided that it has the original engine block,
yes,
the original transmission and the original chassis plate, it's worth rebuilding. And really, you only need those three key components to construct an entire E-type from scratch. And it will be worth it.
Oh yeah, it will be.
It will be worth it because the cars themselves are worth so much and all the parts are available to do it with. I wouldn't know where you begin with a car like this because what's parts availability like? Where would you go in getting, bits of trim like this? Or, I mean, thankfully that is a fairly complete car by the looks of things.
As I know from doing a restoration on my CRX, like that was insane. Like trying to hunt down stuff from halfway around the world. And that's a car that's half as old as this is.
And even little Danny Jazz, right?
Oh, jeez.
We bought Danny Jazz as an MOT'd running car. And that's proving a challenge. Because Danny was a barn find, right?
Like, I'm struggling just to find like an oil filters for those. I'm getting people tell me, this is the last one we have in stock. And I'm like, eep. And that's a car that's not even 40 years old yet.
But I think, let's say that the people that do this, and they do it for the love of it, we salute you. So we can't go into the auction without paying to look at cars that you've got to pay to own. However, thankfully, look, we can have a look here. So there's a lot of very, very nice Jags for sale.
And some Japanese stuff.
And some
which
Japanese
I'm
stuff.
actually quite shocked about.
So
It's
look,
almost like the Japanese also made classic cars.
legit classic cars, right? This is it. S2000.
Yeah,
Pulsar, and then Tanya's having a bit of a lady crisis behind the camera. Why are you having a lady crisis, Tanya?
Delta Integrale.
Look at the crisis. How bad do you want that, Tanya? Yeah. Beautiful Daimler here.
It's very pretty.
Which, for those that don't know, so at this point, Daimler was under the Jaguar umbrella. So the Daimler is like a posh Jag. If you felt at the time that a Jag was maybe a bit too Arthur Daly, then you bought a Daimler instead. And one of the few differentiating things was, well, you got the Daimler hubcap.
Nah.
And you got the famous fluted grille. But of course, what you still got was the grace, the space, the pace.
The pace.
Oh gosh. Oh, come and have a whiff of that. I know you can smell that on camera, everyone. Those who've been in one of these old Jags knows exactly what that smells like. What do you think? Could you see me in this one?
I could.
Yeah?
Yeah, I totally could. It's very you.
With my reputation. We've reluctantly dragged our camera girl out from behind the camera because she's finding stuff she's really liking. Ah, it's a bit of you, that is, Tanya.
It is, yes. It's a bit big and it's a bit loud, and that's my kind of thing, to be honest with you.
Doesn't really go very fast.
No.
Looks like it does, but doesn't really do anything.
No. It's all kind of show with very little go.
So that's a classic Tanya car. That is,
Perfect.
isn't
I hope
it,
it's
really?
an auto just to make it even slower, actually.
Hang on. Oh, and wah. It's the 5 litre. Right then, girl. Mims, last year,
Yeah.
we covered some Civic Jordans.
We certainly did.
And there's one there.
And there's one there.
In the auction.
Like, I'm actually very surprised at the amount of like 90s Japanese cars that are here. Pleasantly so. But yeah, like they're legit classic cars now.
It's an
And
exploding
really,
market though,
really
isn't it?
nice to see them being recognised as such.
But who are the people now with the disposable income, allegedly?
Me.
Right? And what happens every time a generation has some disposable income?
We go spaff them on cars we wanted when we were kids.
Yeah, and so that means cars from the 80s and 90s now,
Yeah,
doesn't
exactly.
it? As opposed to traditional classics as people think of with stuff with chrome bumpers and whatever.
Although, that said...
Although, go on, although...
I want a T-Bird. Like, that's going to be my next one.
Is that the one?
It's definitely on my
What's
want
happening
list.
to us both? We're both getting attracted by big wafty cruisers.
I know,
Is this
but
what
it's-
middle age sounds like?
Oh, for you maybe, not for me.
Yeah, fair enough. It is one of those classic cars, isn't it? We're of course talking about the original Ford Mustang. The original Ford Mustang is one of those cars that I think transcends to some extent the culture it was born into.
It does, yeah. I think because they've been in so many movies.
It's a pop culture
Everyone knows
icon,
of them. Yeah,
isn't it?
That's lasted. And who doesn't like a Stang? 15k is kind of range where you'd be like, yeah, I'd totally have one of those, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Like, you can't even buy bloody Fiesta for that kind of money.
Exactly.
Where you could be cruising around in something like this. I know which one I'd rather have. You know, about 4 or 5 years ago, these kind of went a bit nuts, up to sort of like 25, 30 grand.
Because we've been looking,
It's
both
like-
of us have been looking at the market
That's-
for a long time, haven't we? And the
Yeah.
prices just went nuts to the point where you went,
Yeah.
well, I'm not convinced they're worth that. Obviously, there's the outliers like the collector's cars, like the Shelbys
Oh,
and
yeah,
the blah,
of
blah, blah,
course.
blah, blah.
And, you know, the fastback's always going to be mental money.
Yeah, of course.
But, yeah, I'd consider one.
Gorgeous car. We love it. So, pop quiz, I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, shit.
What was the very first James Bond car?
One of these.
Correct.
Yay!
Yeah.
I am
Sunbeam.
so smart. I knew that all along.
Sunbeam Alpine. Yeah.
I knew that. Duh.
Did you though? Yeah, Sunbeam Alpine in Dr. No. Apparently because it was about the only sports car they could hire on the island where they were filming it. Allegedly. I'm sure someone in the comments will go, actually,
I think you'll find,
you'll find, my love.
I don't know nor care.
Ratchet,
Yes,
look.
it's a prelude. And somebody else.
Your premonition was correct. Look, it's all happening.
It's all happening. It's almost like I've sold the market.
I love them. Actually, it's one of my favourite ones. That
Yeah.
and the Gen 3. But,
Yeah, but yeah.
Excuse me. I'm the expert. Yeah.
So you know all those boomer memes where they're like, no one's gonna spend 50 grand. A Honda.
A 90s Honda.
Awkward.
Awkward. Yeah.
This is purports to be the very, very last Talbot Sunbeam Lotus ever made. Apparently it was purchased from a kit of parts and put together. And then this one has never even been registered. So I think there's probably a very good case for these being the very two best Talbot Sunbeam Lotuses Loti in the world, right here. Fabulous. So a big passion of mine that you won't actually have seen on the channel is classic Jaguars, especially what I'd call the Lions era of Jaguars. So those are the Jaguars built under the directorship of Sir William Lyons, who founded the company. And of course some of the most famous cars are these utterly beautiful 50s and 60s Jaguars. So we're stood next to here an XK150S Roadster. This is one of the most desirable classic Jaguars ever made. So the XK150S really was the last gasp breath of the famous XK Jaguar body style. This came just before the E-Type was introduced, and in actual fact had quite a lot in common with the early E-Type. So you got the S specification engine, so it's the 3.8 litre engine, the same as you'd see on an early E-Type, but because this was a car that was introduced in the late 40s, still very traditional construction, you have a body on chassis. They have that kind of Hollywood glamour about them, and that's no accident, because these cars were predominantly sold in America. The thing that really, really made these cars so special was the Jaguar XK engine. For me, one of the finest engines that has ever been made. I've had the privilege of putting quite a few miles on these engines. I'm struggling for words. If you've never driven a Jag with an XK engine in and a really well-tuned one, do yourself a favour and do it, because it is one of the all-time automotive highlights. So here's a surprising one. Many of you driving around in modern Audis and so on may not know that this is the heritage of the brand. A DKW, what would have been especially unique about this car when it was built is these had a two-stroke engine, but Nissan Leaf swap.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's a Nissan Leaf engine.
We've been talking about Leaf swaps quite a bit, haven't we?
We have, yeah.
Very interesting proposition, because the Nissan Leaf is the most produced electric car ever. And they're getting to a point where those cars, because of depreciation, are now starting to get affordable as donors. And there are quite a few aftermarket companies doing solutions putting a Leaf drivetrain in. Now, this is an interesting one for me, because arguably one of the unique things about this car is it was one of the few two-stroke cars ever made.
Right.
But then equally, did it really have enough power to be usable on today's roads?
Probably, I'm going to say no.
I don't know, I haven't made my mind up. Let us know in the comments what you think of this one. It's interesting, isn't it? You've got that lustful look in your eye, Tanya.
Pointy, pointy, pointy.
I feel like there's a song reference.
It's a proper one, not the pretend Formula One. It's the real deal. It is the full Monty.
Yeah.
It is glorious with the full 6.6 whatever cubic inch. Blah,
It
blah,
might
blah,
even have
V8
200
engine.
horsepower. Fancy that.
Maybe.
It might.
But it's glorious. And,
It is.
It's got the lattice wheels in it.
Or the snowflake
or
wheels,
the
right?
well, don't call me a snowflake now, Bob, please. But it's just glorious. I don't know, it's a piece of art. Have a look.
It is. Well, we all know the film, don't we? Right?
We do.
And this is a gold one, not a black one, but nonetheless, there's all the mythology that goes along with the Trans Am.
Absolutely. And, you know, this is it really is. It is an icon. It is a piece of history, and there's no mistaking it. There's nothing else on the planet that looks like a Trans Am. This is something that's really important to me as a car. It is one of my dream cars, and I do hope that I will actually own one day.
Japanese icon, discuss.
Overrated much?
Oh, shots fired.
Oh, I'm sorry, listen, no matter what you've got and you're going to take drifting up the mountain, okay, this will beat it.
Well, we all know that he got his driving style so smooth because he couldn't spill the tofu, right?
Couldn't spill any, so that's all there is to it.
Go on then, for those who don't know, what are we looking at?
Oh, it's an A86 Toyota. Like, what do you want? What do you want from me?
The amount of salt that you're bringing to this presentation.
They're very cool, okay, with the wink wonks, obs.
With the wink wonks.
Twin cam, 1.6. Really, really great engine. But, yeah.
It's a Japanese Ford Escort.
It is. And I don't really understand all the hype around them other than Initial D. Like, great. Cool.
Yeah, but then you could say the same about any pop culture car.
That is true.
What's the deal with DeLoreans? What's the deal with Trans Ams? Etc., etc., etc. You know?
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to be spending like 30, 40 grand for one of these.
No, you wouldn't. You'd be spending 50, 60 on a DeLorean.
Ugh, whatever. I remember early noughties when, before I'd even bought my first Civic, and there was one of these that came up for sale, and it was £5 grand, and it had a full TRD engine, you name it, it had TRD everything. It's £5,000, and at the time I was like, that's a lot of car for the Mini, but I don't have £5 grand. I'd only got like 2.5 to buy my first Civic. I hate to think how much that car would be worth right now.
Hey, Tony, I think now we're finding why Ratchet's a bit salty about AE86s, huh?
Apparently so.
What have you found, boy pants?
Well, what have I found indeed? We were talking earlier about the Ford Mustang. Ford Mustang's a very interesting car with its history, of course. Started out as basically a tarted up Ford Falcon underneath. Classic Ford trick. You take a humdrum car, tart it up with some fancy graphics and bodywork and whatever, and sell it for a premium. By the time this had come around, things had changed a bit. So this is the infamous legendary Mach 1. Do you know what? I've just realised as well, this is another film car, because this was a Bond car. I'm trying to remember the name of the film. I'll put it in
right there.
here. Just so completely of its time. It's phenomenally 70s in a way that a few years ago kind of looked a bit vulgar, and people went, why do you want one of these? They look ugly, they're big and heavy. Well, I mean, when you compare how big cars are now, this doesn't look a terribly big car. But of course, if you're going to have a Mustang Mach 1, then the clue as to why this one's a bit special is right there. Those two words, Cobra Jet. That is
What's that mean then?
Shaker Hood. So that is the air cleaner. So as the engine revs, you'll see that move. And that means that this particular car is installed with a 428 cubic inch V8. Looks at notes, 7 litres.
Wow.
So let's make that live for a minute. That's 3 and a bit MX-5s.
3.5 bottles of pop.
3.5 bottles of pop, absolutely. I mean, whatever metric you want to cut it. It's a honking great V8 in a loud and proud car. I mean, this is mid-century America, right? This is everything you needed to know about America in the time period, and well, I love it. Well, talking of famous film and TV cars, another TV icon is, of course, the famous Volvo P1800 from the Saint. Now, legend goes is that the producers approached Jaguar at the time to provide a Jaguar for the show, and Jaguar weren't interested. Volvo, however, were very keen on having their beautiful coupe, the P1800, featured. And how much of a treat is this? This is actually one of the screen-used Saint cars. So, fabulous cars, beautifully styled, and also interestingly, we're here at the NEC in Birmingham. What's not so widely known is the early cars were actually bodied by Jensen in Birmingham. So, Swedish car, but the body made actually quite locally. The Midlands in the UK used to be a hub of the motor industry. You could say the Midlands in the UK was a bit like Detroit was to America. There was massive amount of manufacturing here. One of the brands some people have perhaps forgotten was Jensen. Now, they had cars, we'll scoot round in a minute, that were really well known as carrying the Jensen badge on, but Jensen also did a lot of coach building for other people. One of their kind of last hurrahs was a tie-up with Donald Healey, the Healey brand, as in the Austin Healey, and they had this car here, the Jensen Healey. So this is the convertible version. This here is the rarer GT, which I think is a fabulous looking thing because I love a shooting brake. The first car that actually had the Lotus slant 4 twin cam engine in, and you can see it was very much built with the American market in mind. So you had these huge impact bumpers on there, which perhaps meant that it really wasn't as pretty as a British sports car should have been. So a very interesting sort of Jensen dead end, but if you follow me this way, camera, come here, the handsome as anything intercontinental ballistic missile of a car, the Jensen Interceptor. I mean, even now, isn't it? I'm just going to say it, for me, it's one of the best looking GT cars ever made. Hugely futuristic styling. Underneath, not at all futuristic. It's a coach-built body on chassis, used drivetrains from America, so it's got a whopping great Chrysler V8 in there. So, I mean, it had the firepower as well that you really wanted from some of this. And these had a lot of celebrity owners. A lot of big celebrities ended up buying these at the time, which you would need to be to buy one because they were very expensive cars. Now, there was a period of time where you could pick these up for not an awful lot of money. Unlike a lot of these hand-built luxury cars, they are fearsomely expensive to restore. But these are now fetching very strong sums of money. So, as we were talking about earlier, barn finds. Is there a barn find car that's worth restoring? The Jensen Interceptor, arguably, most certainly is. All right, so Practical Classics, Classic Cars and Restoration Show.
Yes.
There's a remarkable amount of vehicular paraphernalia.
Yeah, spare parts.
Spare parts.
Like everything for every car that you think you'd probably ever imagine.
There's loads of new old stock parts that are for sale here. So, you know, new old stock stuff. It's stuff that's been sat in a garage on a dusty shelf for years, but it's still there. And the great thing about new old stock parts is that they are exactly of the quality that would have been fitted to the car when it was new.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's not such a good thing. Look at this. Look at all these prints that are available, the books.
Yeah, it's everything you could really want.
Oh, look at that. Oh, I know. Oh, you've got it. Look at this. Ooh. Is there anything catching your eye, Tanya? Tanya's a bit of an in-car.
Camera, so it's kind of difficult.
I know, Tanya's a bit of an in-car audio perv like me as well. Whoa.
Tap, tap, tap.
8-track,
Oh, yeah.
goodness.
Lovely.
Oh, yeah. I could be cruising along with my James Last on the stereo with that. I mean, who doesn't want a bit of that? Oh, look at that. A Sonic's Mirage. Look at that. Medium and long wave. Look, and newfangled solid state technology. Oh, look at that. So
That'll do you.
that's what you need, isn't it?
Trying to say how old I am.
Well, something, of course, about classic cars is classic car culture, and certain cars are a real time capsule of an era, of a style, of a culture which is completely gone now. But of course, something that was really big in 70s was van culture, and oh my gosh, is this not just dripping with 70s grooviness from the orangey brown shag pile. Wow, what do you reckon to this one, Ratchet? This is definitely groovy. Look, we've got a bit of, I've only just noticed, look, have you seen that under the paint? We've got a bit of silver metallics, the heart tells it all, because
everyone knows what's going down, right?
did you have a van in the 70s? Do you have a van now? What do you get up to in your van? No, we do. In the comments, let us know. We want to know.
Hey boy, what you found?
Oh, yo. Cosseh.
Cosseh?
Cosseh.
Have we got a turbo though?
It has, because it's an Escort Cosseh. It's got a great big turbo. Do you know what that means?
It's really slow.
No, it's right fast. Must be. Do you know why?
Why?
It's got a turbo.
Wow.
We're over on the stand here for SAAB Owners Club of Great Britain. SAAB, one of those super interesting, quirky brands that sadly hasn't survived into the modern era. SAAB were one of the very first companies to make a turbocharged road car. SAAB were real turbo pioneers, but what maybe some people don't know is that the origins of this engine here were actually with Triumph. Triumph sold them their original slant 4 engine design, which then SAAB ran with, to the point that in these later cars it was developed to a 16 valve with a turbocharger. But again, more weirdness is it's a front wheel drive car, but the engine is mounted such that the output goes forward and then into a transaxle that powers the front wheels. Like, who else but SAAB? I kind of lament the fact that that kind of individuality, that automotive quirkiness is no longer with us, but then of course neither's SAAB. Brand I have a huge love for, never owned one, probably have to do something about it at some point, is Lotus. The ones I particularly love though have been, I suppose to some extent, the ugly ducklings for many years. The Elite, the Eclat and the XL. These were Lotus's attempt to climb up into sort of the luxury GT car market. So this was the first one, the one that came first, the Elite, styled by the gloriously English named Oliver Winterbottom, who also styled for TVR, did the Wedge cars, the Tasman, the 350i, etc. that I also love. The Elite came first, which again is a sort of unusual shooting brake style looking GT sports car. After that came the Eclat that had a bit more of a traditional coupe roofline. And then Lotus did a little bit of a deal with Toyota where they helped them with the design of the Supra. In exchange, they got access to Toyota's parts bin. So this was sort of the last development of those wedge cars, the XL. Still, I think, a fabulous looking car. I've always thought these are hugely underrated cars, and I think it gets better looking as the years go on. What do you think? Which one's your favourite? Let us know. Hey Ratchet, look what's over there.
I know, something I actually know about. The Gen CRX, like, spoken about it many times, totally underrated. Hugely underrated, in my opinion. It's very cool because, like, it's got a frame that sits in the boot.
Yeah.
So you take the roof off, which, trust me, you can just about do it in heels. Just. Carry it around to the back, put it in the frame, and then it latches into place so that it's locked.
Yeah.
But that frame is hinged, so then you've still got the whole boot for putting your shopping in. So it's super practical.
It's a great concept.
It is.
I'm
It's
sold
absolutely
on the concept
brilliant.
of removable hard tops. They're good.
Yeah, really, really good. And like, I always loved how you got like the matching coloured seats to the body. So damn cool.
Yeah.
I love them.
So we're over on the Jowett stand. Jowett, a brand undoubtedly a lot of our viewers have never heard of before. Where did the brand start?
It started in Bradford in Yorkshire.
In Bradford, Yorkshire.
And they started in the early 1900s.
Yes.
With 2 cars still 1913 origin, 2-cylinder cars. The early Javelins were all Jowetts with 2-cylinder.
Yeah.
And these 2 are that old. They have tiller steering.
Tiller steering.
Tiller steering,
and
yes.
that's the thing with Jowetts, isn't it? It was always very interesting, unique design
Yes.
to
And also, they had gas lights on. On the offside running board, there's a brass cylinder.
Yeah.
You put carbide powder in, drip water, and it created settling gas. Because it was before the days of electricity.
Before the days of electricity. So that's how far back the brand goes.
Yeah,
now,
yes.
when did the brand end? When did it come to
1954.
1954. So we're looking at proper vintage vehicles,
Yes,
but incredibly advanced for the time, weren't
This
they?
started in 47.
1947.
In 54.
Let's have a look. So this is a
Javelin.
A Javelin, indeed. So
and also, the Javelin was the first car in the world to have a curved windscreen.
now there's a factoid for you. I bet you didn't know that, did you?
No.
First car in the world with a curved windscreen.
Yeah, yeah.
So other interesting things, weren't there? So we've got a flat 4 engine.
Flat 4 engine and the torsion bar suspension,
Torsion
independent
bar
all the way
suspension.
around. Yes.
You see, you thought Porsche were pioneers of torsion bar suspension, but here it was.
And also, it's the first car that was legally to take 6 people. It's 3 on the front seat and 3 on the back of the bench seats.
What was it that finally finished off the Jowett Car Company in the end?
The Ford Motor Company.
Ford. Right.
They bought Briggs bodies out. They wouldn't produce the few bodies Jowett needed.
Right.
So
got you.
Jowett just wound up. Tractor factory took it over. The Harvester
Okay.
Company
Oh,
carried on building
Harvester.
tractors there.
Alright.
Then they closed down. It's a Morrison supermarket now.
Martin, tell us about this amazing
Right, this
car
is
here.
1929 car,
Yep.
and he uses it for trials. That piece of wood there's holding the clutch off the cone clutch.
Oh, cone clutch.
Yeah.
Okay, as you'd find in an overdrive type unit then.
No,
like
no,
a
no,
cone
that's a
clutch.
cone clutch. Let the pedal off, it goes in and grabs. Instead of the plate clutch.
Instead
it's
of a
cone
plate clutch, it's a cone
If you
clutch.
leave it, and it's a water-cooled manifold, you see.
I see.
Water heated manifold. Yeah.
Water heated manifold.
Yeah.
So I mean, they were incredibly unique,
But they're ahead of the time.
Designs and
They're always ahead of
engineering,
the
weren't they?
time in the design, yeah.
massively so, massively so. And so this still competes now.
This was competing last week, yeah.
Last
Look
week.
at the mud on the wheels.
See, this is what we like to see. There's people who think that these old cars will just fall to pieces if you don't use them, don't they? But they.
Well, look at this chappie. Richard Gainey races this still.
So this is a Jupiter.
Jupiter.
Yeah,
It's
fabulous
raced
looking car.
at Le Mans in Goodwood.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Goodwood. You see, this is one of the things I love when you meet people who are from the VSCC and the
Yeah.
vintage car game.
Yeah.
They get used, don't they?
Yeah.
They get used. They're not
I'm an old buggy, you
mollycoddled.
see.
Enjoying
The
it?
Jowett Club is the oldest car club in the world.
Is
It's a
it?
single car club. And next
Amazing.
year, it's our centenary.
Well, let's say in advance for next year, a happy centenary to the Jowett Car
Well,
Club.
it'll be in Yorkshire next year.
Oh, well, that's virtually on our doorstep.
Well, if you look on the internet, the Jowett Car Club advertise all that sort of stuff. You can always come and visit us. You'd be welcome.
Well, how's that for an invitation? Martin, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
We'll see you there. Hey, girl.
Hello.
That looks familiar.
Yes, this is what our limiteds look like when they're clean and slightly better looked after than mine is.
So go on
And
then,
look,
All
this
Limited.
one's got an engine.
Tell us what makes the All Limited special then, girl.
Right, so Jap import only. They only made 1,000, of which 896 or is it 94? I can't remember.
Oh,
were
you know, if
in-
you get it wrong, they're going to be right
I
in the
know.
comments.
I think you'll find that actually we're in satellite mica blue. This beautiful colour that I fell in love with,
It's a
and the other
gorgeous colour.
106 or 104, I can't remember, were all in white. So
Yeah.
the white ones are crazy rare. Mine is obviously blue, my Mia 3. 1.8, 4.3 ratio diff in the back, 5-speeder standard, and they all had the extremely rare red leather interior.
It's a beautiful colour
It is a
combo,
beautiful,
isn't it?
beautiful interior. So yeah, they all had the red interior, which I mixed up with mine because I find it a bit too much red.
Because it's not just red, is it? It's red!
Yeah,
Ah, it's a Mr. 2, but with added ratchet interest.
yeah.
Because what's in there, Ratchet?
It's a Honda K series.
K-swap the world.
Yeah,
That fits very nicely, doesn't it?
it? it looks very at home. I like it.
So I know someone with one of these. This era MR2 with a K20 in, with a turbo.
Ooh.
They're dynoed at 700 horsepower. And they call it the supercar killer because he just likes going out and cruising and waiting to find supercar owners.
Yeah, I can
who just think,
imagine.
oh, you've got an MR2, how nice and cute.
I like the two-tone. Make two-tone a thing.
Bring it
Bring it
back.
back.
Bring back two-tone cars. We love two-tone cars.
Yes.
It's carrying on with the narrative of what we were talking about, how the classic car movement has changed. So let's talk about classic Rovers. Now, not that long ago, people would have even said, why is a Rover SD1 here? But there can be no doubt that this belongs here. It was the last of the big Rovers, the last of the traditional Rovers, if you will, especially the V8, an engine that's very close to my heart. So we've got the last of that era Rover, the Rovers that preceded it, the hugely modern, hugely futuristic P6, a car that pioneered lots of concepts we take for granted now. Things like crash safety zones, engine submarining to help survival. But then there's going to be people going, well, obviously an SD1 and a P6 belongs here, but now we're onto the 200 and 400 series Rovers because, well, we're looking at cars now that are 25, 30 years old. It might seem difficult to believe it, but that's what we're looking at nowadays. These are modern classic cars. And I think it is an absolute credit to the Practical Classics show is that you have such diversity from those old Jowetts we were looking at there and veteran cars through to what are today's classic cars. And indeed a good friend of mine who is 20 years younger than me, one of his first cars, his entry into the classic movement is, I think it's an MG ZT, which is the MG branded Rover 400, you know. Be aware of it, you know, the classic movement, what people see as classic cars, it moves on, time changes. They're kicking us out, can you believe it? That's it.
I'm so
There's
deeply
so much to see.
offended.
I think this is the first time where we've never actually been able to complete looking at everything in one day.
I know. What the heck?
What a massive show this has been. I've really enjoyed it. How about you?
Yeah, I've had a great time. It's been unexpected in a good way that I've seen so many Japanese cars.
I know, that's made you
I
day
honestly
there,
thought
hasn't
I was
it?
only going to see like 5. And there's been plenty, and not just MX-5s.
I think it's quite interesting, isn't it, is that it shows that without any doubt, the classic movement has moved. And it has to be, right? The clue's in the name, it has to be a movement.
Yeah.
And for it to be a classic movement, it has to move with the times. And judging by this, it is. So that's fantastic news.
Yeah.
So our first show report of the year is done. That means that we have to say goodbye. So from me, Bob,
And me, the Ratchet.
it's goodbye from us and goodbye from another episode
Of
of
Motorhaus.
Motorhaus. Now, I wouldn't know where you'd begin with a car like this.
No.
It's alright, we can cut in with some B-roll.
Yay.
Right? Good old B-roll, so. This is fantastic. Yeah, we'll go in with some B-roll. Who also... Is it hard?
Straight at me.
Is it hard to tell, really? Right. And B-roll.